Hi, Lorenzo. Welcome to the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast.
Hey, Julia. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, our pleasure to have you. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. We were kind of acquaintances through social media up until just recently, and then you went through the Centurion Mentorship Program where I got to know you much better, which was a complete pleasure. So I'm really looking forward to bringing your wisdom, all of your knowledge and passion to our listeners. So I appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. All right. What I would love to do to start is, could you share a little bit with our listeners what you're currently doing with your IHP certification? And then we'll back it up a little bit, talk about how you got started, maybe what led you to go down this road, if that sounds good to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got involved with the Integrative Health Practitioner program because I knew I wanted to educate about health. I didn't know through what means. I didn't know if I wanted to start a podcast or a blog, but I was so passionate about helping my family members figure out the root cause to whatever it was that ailed them, that I knew I wanted to teach people how to get well. It's like all I would ever talk about. It became my new passion, I guess, after, I don't know, like the bodybuilding and like the sports, the athletic stuff kind of fell out naturally. And I did IIN first, which I thought was an excellent program. But at the end of it, I felt left not really knowing how to start a business and not really knowing how to help people identify the root causes to their issues. You know, how do I really put together a protocol for an individual based on their specific needs? I didn't really grasp that from that program. Not to say it's a bad program, but I knew I wanted more. And I started listening to Dr. Cabral's podcast, and I just knew that he was someone who knew how to ask the right questions. He knew about lab testing and how to find the right answers so that he could then provide specific protocols based on whatever the individual needed. And when he came out with IHP, it was a no-brainer. I said, I have to do this. There was a level 1, there was a level 2. As we know, in level 1, there's the entire de-stress protocol, which is a holistic approach to natural health, mind and body. And then the level 2 is going through labs, learning how to assess labs, look at people's hormones, gut function, neurotransmitters, toxicities, etc. And I made it happen. That was a few years back now. And now I have an open practice, virtual online.
That's great. Yeah. I always say, because people ask me all the time, I actually did IIN too. And, they're like, oh, what's the difference? And I always say the main difference is one's kind of like just reading like a book, a general book on health and wellness, right? It's a nice kind of gentle approach with lots of speakers, right? But if you want to make a career out of this, if you want to truly help people get well, right, through other means than just, good food habits. The IHP just really sets things apart in identifying real clinical imbalances, right, that we can find through functional medicine lab testing and even things like the de-stress protocol, right? It's just very direct and focused and really allows people to just get into it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The key word I think you used was clinical, clinical imbalances, because you could recommend a specific meal plan that is removed of all the processed foods, which, get back to more organic whole foods. That's going to be great. But as you know, if someone has clinical imbalances of candida or bacterial overgrowth and they start eating a bunch of raw vegetables, that's not going to be good for them. It's going to cause that candida and bacteria to overgrow. Their symptoms are going to get worse. And it's not, again, bio-individualized to that person's needs.
Exactly. Yes. And to that point, the allowing to really get into someone's bio-individuality to their imbalances, we have the roadmap to do that, to take each person to bio-individually, investigate what's kind of making them tick, what's pushing them towards dis-ease, and kind of stopping that in its tracks and getting them more rebalanced. Yeah, it really is the true beauty of the program. And really kind of, I don't think there's much else out there like it. And
Agreed.
All right. So you have your own practice. It's clearly something that you're passionate about when it comes to helping others. You kind of mentioned that you were doing it for family. And that's, I think, so many people say that like they're doing it for themselves, they're doing it for people that they love. That's how like it's something you're meant to do, right? When you're doing it before anybody's willing to pay you, and it's just something that makes you tick. Tell me a little bit about which our topic of the day is going to kind of be. What is your biggest passion when it comes to topics around health and wellness and helping others in a specific way?
So right now, I help clients specifically rebalance their hormones naturally. And what that means is a lot of times if women are dealing with, low progesterone, as an example, and they're dealing with what we call estrogen dominance, where they have brain fog, they have adult acne on the chin, they are irritable before their menstrual cycle. That's an imbalance. That's a hormone imbalance. And typically, if a woman were to go to her doctor with those symptoms, and they were to run her hormone levels and see that individual has lower levels of progesterone, they may recommend synthetic progesterone, which is just a Band-Aid approach because it's coming from a place of, okay, you're not making enough, so let's just give you more. Whereas from a functional medicine perspective, and the approach we take as integrative health practitioners, in my practice, we ask, why are you not producing enough progesterone? And most often that comes down to some type of stress that could either be psychological or it could be physical. And it is basically elevating their stress hormones, which has an inverse relationship with reproductive hormones like progesterone, estrogen, DHEA, testosterone. And as those stress levels go up, the sex hormones go down. And I find it fascinating, hormones. I'm not exactly sure why. I mean, there's many different systems of the body. There's the cardiovascular system. There's the immune system. I love the immune system. But something about the reproductive system and hormonal system is just fascinating to me, because it's something that we can make so simple in understanding. And it's something that we can have an immediate impact on, depending on if we can bring ourselves from a state of fight or flight, a stress state, to a more parasympathetic nervous system state, also known as rest and digest and relaxation and recovery.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think, you bring up so many great points. The biggest of them absolutely being that stress does affect hormones in a very intricate, in-depth way. And I think that the longer we all exist in modern day society, the bigger that problem is going to get, because I think stress continues to, be on the rise for so many individuals. They think that they're just kind of like living the same life that everybody else is living, right? But I think that when stress is part of the equation and people are kind of just like, going, and they're not really taking into account what their lifestyle may be doing, right? All of those symptoms are not necessarily from the stress, they're the way that the stress are affecting their hormones. And when the hormones get out of whack, right, they are really like the building blocks, the landscape of our mood, our energy, our metabolism, our, cognition too. While they're not the symptom, they are the fallout, right, of a lot of other, while they're not the problem, they're the symptom. They're the fallout of a lot of imbalances, and kind of digging deep into, okay, like you said, not band-aiding it with synthetic, hormone replacement, which is getting so popular. Like, I mean, I know like they're just putting guys on testosterone at like 35, like just because they have low energy. Doctors aren't even running labs and they're putting them on testosterone at like 35. Wow. Like, oh, you have low energy, or just take some testosterone. That'll probably help. And much like women in birth control, oh, you have heavy, painful periods, here's birth control. No one's taking into account the long-term repercussions of these types of interventions, right? It's a short-term strategy, but really, how is this going to long-term, cause issues? Is it a good long-term solution? And in my opinion, no. We're just so used to that instant gratification of like fix the problem immediately as a society, that I think hormones are a very it's a market where that is very appealing because you can do something to immediately change that hormonal picture. Unfortunately, it is a Band-Aid, and you're not giving the body the proper tools to kind of do it itself, which would kind of fix the issue, right? If you're looking at the root cause and fixing the problem, now that lasts longer than just the Band-Aid.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It has longevity. And there's also negative effects of using the Band-Aid approach, particularly in men. If they're given testosterone replacement therapy at too young of an age, it essentially trains the body to not produce testosterone on its own, so that you may become dependent on it for the rest of your life and no longer be able to regain your natural testosterone production back. And the issue is contrary to popular belief, like 35 is way too young. In my opinion, 40s is young, 50s is young. Even up to the age of 65, it is feasible to naturally produce testosterone on your own. But again, like you said, Julia, and I've heard you say this before, which I love this. I'm not sure who said it. Just because it's common doesn't mean it's normal. And so many people go throughout their lives doing things in American society, culture that is common, but it's not necessarily a normal, healthy practice when we look to specific populations like the blue zones who eat a more Mediterranean style diet, plant-based, with lots of high antioxidant fruits and vegetables and olive oil to lower their inflammation levels, which is a form of physical stress on the body. So these men are able to produce healthy testosterone longer because they're not inflamed. The testes in the male body are not inflamed, so therefore they can produce testosterone and have more longevity. But the key is you can regain that back if you know how to reverse the process and lower the inflammation and remove the stressors up until the age of 65.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if we're being honest when it comes to symptoms, right? Symptoms are messages. So if we take symptoms less as an annoyance, right? As let's just fix this somehow. They're messaging that something's off. If testosterone is low, right? And you haven't addressed low maybe zinc or low B vitamins, or the fact that you're not moving your body and, working out, or that you're, like you said, eating an inflammatory diet, you're skipping over all of the things, right, that your body actually needs. And the symptom is kind of calling you to pay attention to. You're skipping over all of that, and you're missing the opportunity to really fix other things along with it, right? Okay, so if it's vitamin C and zinc that you need, more of, and B vitamins, well, that's also going to affect your immune system. That's also going to affect your adrenals. That's also going to affect, your cognition and your mood. So there's so much that you can kind of just skip over by going to the symptom, over here at point C, and skipping over A and B that could resolve C if you just paid attention to A and B, right? And that's the beauty of digging kind of root cause to either toxicities, deficiencies, lifestyle. I'm huge when it comes to lifestyle with stress, because even, supplements, right? You're kind of just still, are you out trying to out supplement lifestyle choices, right? And it's so tricky because, again, modern day society, like, you can't control the kids' sports schedule and, maybe financial conflicts or, things that are going to come up. But ultimately, how do you cope with some of that stuff from a lifestyle standpoint, right? So you're not dependent on constant supplementation to outweigh that in a sense.
Yeah, that's so true. And I've heard you mention before, if you do have a lifestyle that is stressful, but you perceivably enjoy it, right? Like, some people love being on the go. Maybe they're entrepreneurs and they love managing multiple businesses or managing a team, but it's still stress on the body. So I've heard you mention before, we can mitigate those effects by taking something like an adrenal soothe, which contains ashwagandha, which has been clinically proven to lower or modulate cortisol levels, the stress hormone. So that can be helpful, but I think you're right. It's the lifestyle piece. It's having balance, of which I probably need to work on more so personally. I think naturally I'm inclined to do better with supplementation. It's very easy for me to just take supplements. I've never had problems swallowing pills or anything like that. I find herbalism and nutritional supplements fascinating, especially when they're backed by science and clinical research. But yeah, the lifestyle piece is huge, because it was Elliot Rowe, who's a mindset coach. He said, if you know what you need to do, or sorry, he said, if you don't know what you need to do, you need a strategist coach. If you know what you need to do and you're not doing it, you need a mindset coach. So for example, if you know you need to be getting in bed in between 9 and 10 p.m. at night, and like myself, you're scrolling on Instagram and you're just, mindlessly entertaining yourself, and 10 rolls around and you haven't even started your bedtime routine, taking your magnesium, putting on your blue blocking glasses, anything like that, or melatonin if you're going to use it. It's like really gaining that mindset of, I can do this and I get to do this. I don't have to do this. I get to do this. And that takes time and that takes work. But I think you're right. I think the lifestyle piece moves the needle in many cases, sometimes more than the supplements.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I love that differentiation, right? Because a lot of times we're educating our clients on the why, right? Why is it important to put your phone down? What does blue light do to, melatonin and cortisol? What does, not breathing mindfully do to, stress levels and your body's ability to access the parasympathetic state? What does, poor digestion do, right? We're educating. And a lot of those clients will take that education and they'll make the changes. A lot of clients might take that education and not, right? And then that's where kind of we tap into the mindset piece of, like you said, if they have the knowledge and they're still not doing it, okay, why? And a lot of people, have, thoughts that they're just trying to, I know when I'm, on my phone, or I'm not using, not deep breathing, I'm more just trying to like numb myself than be mindful, right? I'm trying to do something that distracts myself from the thing that I know I need to feel, process. And I think so many people can kind of get into that habit. And that still, even though we're not feeling the stress in the moment, right? It's still there. It's going to come back. It's going to come back around.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we have so many distractions, I think, at our fingertips, that it makes it quite easy to do that these days and kind of push away a lot of the ways that nature really intended for us to manage our stress, right? Walking, being outside, deep breathing, eating well, moving our body, hydrating properly, right? Those are all ways that our body, if we're breathing slowly, we're not running from a lion. We can't. If we're walking slowly, there's no lion chasing us, right? Or we'd be running. Our body can perceive simple acts of daily living as, oh, she's safe, right? And if the body feels safe, it is going specifically female bodies that feel safe are going to ovulate properly. Ovulating systems are going to produce adequate amounts of hormones, right? Now you're not dealing with PMS, but if the body constantly feels like it is in a stressed state, or if it's in fight or flight, that hormone cascade gets interrupted and short-circuited all over the place. And now you're dealing with sluggish hormone production, which creates the symptoms, right?
Yes, exactly. I love that you said that too, because I had mentioned earlier that understanding hormones can be made so simple. And like you said, a woman's body that feels safe is going to produce optimal levels of progesterone. And that's really the key, one of the key ways of explaining it that has been so helpful for me. Because if you think about it, if the body, the nervous system, doesn't feel safe, in nature or our creator's wisdom, why would it then think that it's an opportune moment for you to reproduce and bring a child into an unsafe world, right? And typically in nature, feeling unsafe, like you said, is some type of physical danger, whether it's a physical threat from another human or an animal, or it's famine, there's not enough food. Those are not great times to think about for conception.
Yeah. Right. Because what happens if you have to keep running? Or what happens if the body is so smart that it's like, oh, we might not have enough nutrients to sustain this pregnancy, or we might need to keep running, which would be stressful to sustain a pregnancy. So the body's like, well, not now. We'll let you continue to run or continue, under eating with women. This is so common with infertility. We'll just let you finish this state of famine. And then when you can eat well, right, we'll produce better hormones for you to conceive. I mean, it, like you said, it's so simple. It gets far more complicated if you want to, right? There's that rabbit hole that we can go down, but also it can be so simple.
It can be so simple. And the thing is, the key, what it really is, and what it boils down to is, are you in a state of safety? Are you in a state of fear? Because those are the different nervous system states. If you're feeling safe, you're in the parasympathetic. If you're feeling fearful and anxious and worried or scared, you are in the sympathetic nervous system state. And the body can only allocate so much hormone production to one specific area at a time. It's, for the most part, a binary system. That's why I say stress hormones has an inverse relationship with reproductive hormones, because if the building blocks, we could call them, are being allocated to making more stress hormone, like you said, you're not feeling safe, I'm just going to keep you running. It's going to keep producing more cortisol, which means by default, for men, testosterone is going to go down. For women, progesterone is going to go down, and they're not going to be able to have the fertility levels they need to conceive and produce a healthy, pregnancy.
Yeah. Yes, because our body is always acting in a state of trying to protect us or survive. And we don't need to get pregnant to survive. We do need to escape threats to survive. So it will always, to your point, prioritize that safety over everything else, right? So if we are not giving it the message that is already being done, it will continue to prioritize that. And that is what I believe, kind of, is it a lot of the root cause of the fertility epidemic, the infertility epidemic? I think there's a lot to do with toxicities and massive depletion as well. But I think the other piece of how just, getting pregnant can be a stressful event, right? And how do you help a woman kind of come to grips with the process in a way that it's not stressing her out, right? How many times have you heard stories in our space of women who they adopt and they finally, stop trying to get pregnant. And then the next thing you know, they're pregnant, or, they stop and they think about doing fertility. And then they, when they stop trying, when they stop stressing about it, this was something that I actually did with my first. I was like, you know what? I'm done trying. I don't want to do this anymore. This feels really stressful. My husband and I were just like, it was a stressful thing between the two of us. And I was like, eventually it will happen, but I actually I surrender to the fact that maybe it won't.
Mm-hmm.
8 weeks later, lo and behold.
Wow.
But it was because my body was like, oh, we don't have to grip so tight to this stress anymore.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. You're able to let go of that sense of control that you wanted, it sounds like, which can induce anxiety, and that anxiety is stress. And I think you hit the nail on the head, because I think the issue is most people just don't associate the specific types of things that you had just mentioned, the toxicities, the depletion, things like phthalates. They don't associate that with stress. But if it is a toxin, there's over 150,000 now man-made toxins in our environment, half of them which are carcinogenic, meaning they cause cancer. Those toxins are stressors on the body. And the problem is, the media, social media, downplayed a lot of this information as if it's like insignificant. Like not too long ago, I think there were a group of dietitians who were proponents of aspartame or something like that. They found out that they were caught. They were paid off by, I think, some type of institution for nutritionists, and to basically be proponents of things that have been clinically proven to be bad for us and toxic to the body. And so they basically took payoffs. But my point is that, you can't necessarily trust mainstream media. You can't necessarily trust certain institutions, because a lot of times, unfortunately, often It's the doctors and the dietitians who have the client's best interest, but it's the people who educate them or formulate pharmaceuticals for them who put profits over people.
Mm. Yep.
And a lot of people just miss, all the different things, the processed food, the toxins, the BPA, like you mentioned, the fluoride, the chlorine in our tap water that causes stress on the body.
Absolutely. Yes. And so many people, I think, are still in the mindset of if it was that bad for you, would they let all of this stuff be in food, water?
Right.
And the answer is they're a business.
The answer is what?
The answer is it's in their best business interest, right? As a business model, right? If all of a sudden everybody got well, how would the pharmaceutical company profit, right? Which I'm sure you have an opinion on that.
Exactly.
It kind of has a conflict of interest, right? Like there's no reason why they would tell you that the water's bad for you, why they would take the, ingredients out of food. It's a very cheap way to process tons of food, right? When you use really poor ingredients. And so now you can sell a cheap product for a lot, more money, which is a bigger profit margin. And nobody's really in the business of getting people well, unless you're in our business, right?
Right.
It's much more of a profit when it comes to big pharma, big food, all of it.
Yep, that's exactly right. And it's not even like this is conspiracy or speculation or anything like that. This is proven. I mean, just recently they changed all the names of the artificial colors to names you can't even recognize. So instead of like red whatever number after, it's called like Allura or something like that. They give it this fancy name. So now, and by the way, artificial food colors have been linked with gut issues, neurological disorders, behavioral issues. And now it has this fancy name, which makes it even harder for the parents who are trying to make healthy choices for their kids to understand that this product is not in the best interest of my child. Mm-hmm. And to your point, it's like, I'm not downplaying conventional medicine or big pharma at all by saying it's not in pharmaceutical companies' interest to get people healthy. It's to treat sickness. That is fundamentally what conventional medicine does. And is treat sickness. It's sick care. It's not health care, because the only time they make recommendations is when you need some type of pharmaceutical drug or you need some type of surgery. So you're already sick when you go to see them. But how do we get the body well, and how do we prevent someone from getting sick? That is more of a functional medicine and natural health approach, right? And unfortunately, I think a lot of people miss that. And if they didn't, then they would be more open-minded, to seeking alternative therapies. But the thing is we've been indoctrinated for so many generations by the media of like, what is the best form of medicine? There is no best form of medicine. Conventional medicine is absolutely amazing for emergency care. Like if a loved one of mine or someone were having a heart attack, obviously go to the closest emergency room, or some type of physical trauma to the body from an accident, a car crash. Of course, go to conventional medicine. But for chronic issues where you're someone who's dealing with hormonal imbalances, you're dealing with chronic migraines, you're dealing with muscle aches and pains on a regular basis, and it's not a life-threatening situation, I always recommend that you get a second opinion from a natural health provider or an integrative health practitioner.
Yeah, absolutely. Because in that model lies root cause analysis rather than, Band-Aid approach to symptoms. And that's really the main difference. And then you're able to get well and stay well and not deal with perhaps symptoms from medication that you go on, right? And then that leads to something else. And then you need to take another one. And it's kind of just that now you're tied into that system versus identifying a root cause of the imbalance, addressing that, and then lots of things that maybe you didn't even notice were there, right? I hear this all the time. Like someone would come to me for hormonal issues, but then addressing what we address, like their gut feels better. It's so weird. I used to have this like pain in my foot. I never really thought anything of it, when I would get up in the morning, but like that's gone, because we've lowered inflammation. There's so many things then resolved thereafter that they didn't even think were issues. And so that's that's really the beauty of what we do.
Yeah, exactly. It's about, to your point, it's about getting the body healthy at a foundational level, because the body knows how to heal itself. And that's the thing is, like, doctors are given such high esteem, because they wear white coats and like I said, the basically the how the media has, convinced people that they are the leading experts in
They paid
all of
a lot of money for their degree. They had write lots of papers.
Yeah, right. And the thing
And
is,
they're brilliant.
like,
They are
they
smart.
they
In
are
what they were trained to do and how they were educated.
exactly. In that modality, they are the experts. If I have an emergency medical situation, I want to go to the best conventional medicine doctor, but that doesn't mean that that medical doctor who specializes in sick care is going to be the best for healthcare.
Mhm.
And it's just a shame that, and that's probably one of the things I'm most passionate about, is just educating people that there are alternative options. And in our field, we work on getting the body foundationally healthy, because the doctor doesn't heal any, no doctor, I don't heal anyone, we don't heal anyone. The body heals itself as long as it's given the proper tools. And most often, like you said, people are depleted of specific vitamins and minerals and nutrients. Omega-3s is a common one. Vitamin D is a huge one, especially for hormones. People are low in certain minerals like selenium for hormones and zinc for testosterone. It's insane. And most people wouldn't know this if they just run their blood work with their medical doctor. But if they were to run an at-home functional medicine lab, like we provide, a minerals and metals test to look at your minerals levels and your heavy metals, or the stress, mood, and metabolism test to look at your reproductive hormone levels, your stress levels, which push down your reproductive hormones, as well as your vitamin D and blood sugar. It's a world of difference, but that's sort of a roundabout way for me to get to my point, which is your clients you're working on hormones with them, and then they notice, oh, like my gut issues are dissipating, or that pain in my foot is gone because they're lowering inflammation. When you give the body the proper tools to heal, and it lowers that inflammation and begins to heal itself, you notice all sorts of things start to change, because you're working on health at a foundational level. You're not working on sickness at, one little symptomatic prescription at a time.
Yep, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And the beauty of what we do really lies in that approach. And I think clients who come to us have usually gone through, and I'm sure you noticed this, they've usually gone through what we described, in the conventional sense. And, they haven't had much luck with it. And they're able to kind of see that there's an alternative. But I think you and I, before we started recording, we're talking about the passion for, imagine if everybody knew, right? This is what Dr. Cabral's mission is, certainly. If more people knew what other options were out there, right? And now maybe a lot of it isn't financially accessible to everybody. But I think if more people knew that there were other options, who knows, right? What those people would be taking for avenues, right? And I think that's, again, Dr. Cabral's greatest mission is to make this much more accessible. And to your earlier point, right? Do you need a strategist, right? Or do you need a mindset coach? So lots of people that are in conventional care, you might talk to them and be like, oh, they need a mindset, but they may not know any better. They may have been brought up in a home that did glorify that model and those professionals. And again, they are good at what they are designed to do. It is not preventative care. It is not health and wellness. And I think that's the main difference.
Yeah, you're spot on. And as you were mentioning that, it brought something to my attention, which is the other thing is, for those clients who you might say in the conventional medicine world, who you might say, oh, they need a mindset coach. Well, they may not. It's just that's the world that they were brought up in. The reason they were brought up in that world is because pharmaceutical industries have a conflict of interest of sharing anything else with you, to the point where, not many people understand this, or I don't think it's brought up enough. How, take something, for example, like scabies. What did they call this? I know a little bit about this history. Specific group of traders or pirates or something like that that were getting. They called them limeys,
Okay.
and they called them limeys because they were getting scurvies, which is caused by a vitamin C deficiency. So they were juicing limes and they were giving them to these pirates, and their symptoms were vanishing. Right? Like, you could say that legitimately cured their scurvies. Legally, you can't say that.
Right.
So the things that we're working on with people, where we're reversing their ailments, we're rebalancing their body, it's just a use of semantics. But I can't come on and say I can cure this and that and that and this and that. If I could, a lot more people would listen, don't you think?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I recently, when I was pregnant with my third, I was in my OB's office, and a new nurse who, was new to the practice that I hadn't seen yet. She was going through my file and she said, "Is this, it says that you have PCOS?" And I was like, "Well, I had PCOS." I said, "When I was trying to get pregnant with my first." And she kind of looked me up and down, and I'm not overweight. I don't have acne. I don't have any visible signs of PCOS. And she said, "You don't have PCOS." I said, "I don't anymore, but that's just because I've resolved the hormonal imbalance that was giving me all of those symptoms." And she literally looked at me like, "What are you?" She was looking at me like I was insane. And I said, "I don't get cysts on my ovaries anymore. I don't have the hormonal imbalances because I've completely changed my lifestyle." And she goes, "I'm just going to delete it from your account." And I was like,
Wow.
"Okay." But she couldn't even acknowledge the connection that I was making to, are you saying I need to either have it or die with it? She's like, "There's no way you have it, because one, you don't look like you have it," which I think is a huge disservice to women, because I know a lot of women struggle with hormone imbalances that do not look like they do, because they actually try. And if they didn't try, right? I said to her, if I ate a certain way and didn't exercise and didn't take care of myself, I would have all of those I would gain weight. I would have all of the hormonal symptoms that come with PCOS. And I think a lot of women who don't fit the visual picture of imbalances do get brushed off by conventional medicine. You look healthy, you look fine, or even men, right? If they're not overweight. And I think it's a huge disservice, right? Because there can still be considerable imbalances, whether it be deficiencies, whether it be toxicities, in a body that quote unquote looks healthy. I've worked with, men and women in this position. But it was just so interesting to me that she was just quick to delete it. It was never even there.
Yeah, that's it was a typo.
But with confusion, right? She didn't understand that, how could you have gotten rid of it? And right, that is that's the fundamental, issue with, they believe that it's a diagnosis, a kind of this thing for life, and that there's no real alternative to lifestyle choices that could perhaps better your health outcomes. And yeah, it was a super interesting experience.
Yeah, I'm sure that's wild. But I think, to our point, it's that was the education she has, right? And no blame on her. That's what she, that's what she believes is the gold standard of medicine. And there's no alternatives, right? And that's not necessarily her fault. That's just what she was taught. So who's doing the teaching, right? She's just the messenger, is more of the issue.
Who's profiting from the teaching, right? It just keeps going up.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. And well, congratulations, by the way, for, keeping an open mind and overcoming that, because that's huge. And if there's anything that I want to instill in people, is that, you're one of probably many thousands and thousands of women who have done the same, because they've kept an open mind. They've sought out alternatives. They have asked the right questions. That's the key for me, is are you working a practitioner who specializes in at-home lab testing, so they can specifically get you the data that you need, so they can personalize your protocol to begin reversing the process of whatever chronic ailments you developed, and that's why I'm so passionate about helping people through all phases of their life who are dealing with hormonal imbalances, whether they're men or women. Because like you said, hormones are tied to your cognition, your mood, your metabolism, your energy, your libido, so many different things. And when you're able to give someone those things back, their whole attitude, their whole outlook on life changes. It's like going from a cloudy day to a sunny day, and being able to give someone that joy and give them that energy where they can now focus on what they're passionate about in life brings me a great deal of gratification that I'm not sure can come from anywhere else than the health field. Mm-hmm. I'm not, maybe being a parent and teaching from that perspective, maybe.
Yeah.
But it's hard to describe.
The kids aren't always as grateful, though.
Right. Thanks, Mom.
That's a little bit more of a thankless job. I'll warn you ahead of time. I'm told, I think I got grateful when I became a parent myself. So, I used to think like, oh, my mom doesn't know. And I remember after having my first baby, I went to both of my parents and was like, okay, like, I get it. I get the sacrifices you made. I get how hard this was. I get that frankly, I forgive you for not knowing what you were doing all the time, because like you literally learn as you go, right? So stay in the health field. Don't have kids if you're looking for gratitude. You can find the fulfillment inside, knowing what you're doing. You have to be able to give it to yourself, which frankly is something that I'm, to feel good about what you're doing without getting that reciprocation, right? Which is actually, I think, a beautiful thing to learn because, it allows you to give yourself the approval, the gratitude, knowing that you're doing right by them, even when they think you're annoying and whatnot.
Yeah. That's quite powerful. Yeah. It's quite powerful. It reminds me of that quote. It's like the meaning of life. Have you ever heard this? The meaning of life is to plant trees that you will never see bear fruit.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But trusting that they will.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's deep.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been such a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your passion, sharing your thoughts, wisdom with everybody that listened. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much for having me, Julia. And for anyone who's interested in, potentially setting up a free 20-minute consultation, you can check me out on Instagram at Lugo Wellness. That's LUGO Wellness. Also lugowellness.com. And same for TikTok. I'm on TikTok as well. It's just at Lugo Wellness. Shoot me a DM, shoot me an email, and we'll get started.
Thank you so much for having the forethought to say that, because I always ask for social media handles at the end and I forgot. Thank you for doing that. Yes, you're a wealth of knowledge on Instagram. So thank you for providing all of that for those that are there.
I appreciate you. Thank you for your kind words, Julia.
Thanks, Lorenzo. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.